What's up, guys?
What's up?
Alrighty.
A lot.
Hey, guys. My name is Andrew Chow. I'm a reporter at Time Magazine. And this panel is entitled, Is Blockchain the Future of Technology? Which is an incredibly, incredibly wide topic. We could probably spend...
Should we just say yes? And
Yeah, I think, yeah, we're done.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just... but we're going to go in and out of a couple different areas of this. And I just wanted to introduce my panelists. So starting from the end, this is Eva Balin. She is the director of the Graph Foundation. Hey, Eva.
How's it going?
We've got Rick Burton, the CEO at Balance, an iOS wallet for ETH.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Sam Kazemanian, the founder of the stablecoin Frax, and also Everpedia. And we've got Illia, the co-founder of Near.
hello, hello.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining me for this. First I wanted to talk about sort of the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. And we've got a former Googler on stage. Illia, you came from Google. Rick, you also worked in Silicon Valley. And I know from talking to a lot of people around this conference, there are a lot of people who are coming from this sort of Web 2 companies. So I just want to start with you, Illia. How was working in Silicon Valley, and why did you make the leap over?
That's a deep question, but let's start unpacking it. I think the kind of general... First of all, I would say Silicon Valley and Google is also somewhat different, right? Because at this point, Google is like, you know, not a startup for already like 15 years. And so a lot of it is like, we have this big companies that are internally trying to build everything, right? They're trying to build the universe. They, you know, if you're thinking of a project, somebody probably at Google is building it. And so from my perspective, coming from doing open source, coming from doing a lot of kind of more, I would say like smaller projects with smaller teams, it's just way too like compressed. And so kind of looking at crypto where it's a lot more community, it's a lot more collaboration, it's a lot more not about like this specific company or that company, but like protocols that you're contributing to, that's way closer in the kind of way you approach things. And even when we're doing kind of AI startup in Silicon Valley, we were trying to work like that. We worked with Berkeley, we worked with Google, we worked with Microsoft, because we wanted to be kind of, and we open sourced almost all of our code and a lot of our data to really build kind of a platform and kind of community around that. And so I think like, for me at least, on one side, I think the startup community that was built in Silicon Valley is pretty unique in the world, but at the same time, what crypto is end up building is kind of, you know, really pushing it further and kind of bringing a lot of this open source mentality as well as some of the startup mentality and kind of bridging that gap that exists in Silicon Valley to really, you know, build this amazing community.
Rick, can you tell me about your journey from Web 2 to Web 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're a technologist or you're interested in technology at all, there's 4 ways you can get paid, right? It's either fiat currency, like dollars. You can get stock from a large tech company like Google or Facebook and just sell your soul to a retirement farm that's trying to get you to not join a startup. You can earn stock options, which seem like a good deal until you leave, and then you have to pay tax on the gains of something that you have no cash for. So that's how startups have you wrapped up forever. And then there's tokens, which can kind of get you everything from buying a region of a city, which one of my friends did, and getting put in jail, which one of my enemies did. So like the variance of tokens as a compensation metric is just so much larger than dollars, so much larger than stock, and so much larger than stock options. And you can have everything from a seriously unfair token compensation package to one that can literally change your life in 18 months. And I think that we have to be honest about this, is that what's happening here is innovation is downstream of compensation. A lot of people don't understand Silicon Valley history, but my reading of it is it's the first place where the employees got a sniff of the upside, right? And that's why suddenly everybody started working way harder. They're not actually better than any other humans in the world. It's just they got the upside. And so I think crypto protocols, DAOs, dApps, projects, and tokenized systems, literally, not only do they get the investors involved, not only do they get the employees involved, but they get the users and the customers and the participants and the people who use these systems some of the upside. So I think that that's the big transition. It's a gigantic compensation competition if you want to hire engineers, and we are starting to win.
Eva, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the processes of developing technology or funding technology from Web 2 to Web 3 and what makes sort of the development of tech different.
Yeah, sort of echoing what Rick said, tokens allow many people or shareholders or stakeholders to align around one mission without being part of the same organization. So, for example, in the Graph ecosystem, we started with one core developer team, and now we're at 5. And that's just in 1 year. And these are separate organizations, separate entities, but they're all aligned around our mission to build this decentralized protocol. And you can't do that in Web 2. The only people who care about your stock are either the people who are holding it or the people in the company. With Web 3 protocols, anyone can participate and contribute. So even the staking, the utility of that token is contributing to that network, and we don't have many opportunities like that in Web 2.
And one concrete example there is I believe there's a graph curator who couldn't get a job during the pandemic because he was disabled and couldn't move to the certain places to interview. And he's been curating data for the graph, earning GRT from the system, and making a fantastic living. And that's just one of the many examples I've seen in the Graph's Discord, and I've been involved in the project as well. But I think that's exciting because token compensation, whether it's from a protocol, a DAO, a dApp, or any kind of new system that lives on Ethereum or similar blockchains, is a game changer compared to stock options.
Given that Web 3 defines itself almost in opposition to Web 2 so often, I'm just wondering if it isn't ironic that there's so many familiar faces or people who have come out of Silicon Valley and into these new protocols.
I mean, I don't think it's ironic. It's pretty much a combination of people continue learning and figuring out the way to better organize and better compensate and better to kind of build this new world, right? I think exactly the reason why Silicon Valley was built is because it was a better way to kind of build things. And it had a huge attraction, right? For example, for me to go there because anywhere else in the world, it didn't have these opportunities. And now we have kind of the next evolution, right? That is happening, that is already here. And so people who are kind of driven by kind of building a better world, however corny that can sound, right, are also driven to move into this direction as well. And so there's so much leverage and opportunity you can build when you can align all those people to work together. And at the same time, you can, I'm from Ukraine, actually delivering value to people in Ukraine who, hryvnia is all over the place, right? Local currency is not working, a lot of kind of instability happening right now. But even beyond that, you have Philippines, you have Indonesia, all those places which are kind of starving for opportunities and are not able to move to Silicon Valley, right, to get the same access. Now they're able to, right? We have a near crowd platform, for example, where 2,000-3,000 people every day kind of doing data labeling, pretty much, which is used for AI and machine learning on the other side in some Web 2 companies, but they are kind of able to receive, tokens in the platform and able to make good living from that. So kind of creating these new economic vehicles is so powerful, and so people are drawn to that because that allows them to, kind of bring the things they want to build into this world.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you're raising a really important point, that the financing agreements that many of these projects are entering into are exactly the same ones that got us into the situation we're in now. So I think Ethereum had this wonderful moment where about 10,000 nerds funded it on a blog post with Bitcoin, and then we swung way too far the other way with the kind of ICO era where it was just all hype, no delivery, a bunch of people who could barely balance their checkbook raising 10, 20, 50, 100 million, and even more. And just absolute morons left, right, and center shilling projects that could never exist. And now we've kind of swung back the other way, where we're having these incredibly valuable projects that are getting set up with 2, 3 private rounds of funding. And these investors, and I've seen it, they write emails to terrify the founders and say, oh, you've got to worry about regulation at these series. You never know where it's going to go. But as soon as there's a sniff of a liquidity event or some kind of liquidity mining or some kind of token, they're right behind it. And so as a result, we now have dozens of projects going out the door at multi-billion valuations where the regular investor is just getting absolutely hatcheted to death. because these investors are lying to everyone, and it's terrible. So I do think we're seeing some of the similar faces using the similar tactics of wrapping up the seed round, wrapping up the Series A, and then they're getting liquidity within 6 to 18 months. They're tweeting one thing and dumping another thing on chain, and it drives me insane. So what I'm looking for is more founders to have a little bit more regulatory bravery and to start to do things that are sailing closer to the wind, but with sensible valuations and finding ways to identify not just people with money, but people with time to give, people with ideas, people with work to give. You know, you shouldn't just have to be a massive staker or a huge miner to earn tokens from these systems. You should be able to contribute with your mind. But the most important thing is if the valuation goes out the door to the public at hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and then it collapses, everybody feels like shit. Like Vitalik started Ethereum off at 33 cents an ETH, and now it's risen all the way up. And that's number go up is the best fucking marketing tactic in the world. Let me tell you that. Vitalik's a genius. And we need more of that for stuff that people can get into now. And so that's why I would caution founders is don't listen to these investors who terrify you about regulatory issues. They're full of shit. If you do sensible rounds at sensible valuations and try and bring in your community, then you can actually start to reward your community and bring them along with you.
So that's brilliantly said. And I actually wanted to just say, I look at things from the angle of stablecoins. So I founded Frax. Frax is famous for two things. One, an algorithmic dollar-pegged stablecoin, and two, one of the first stablecoins pegged to CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. And on that line, I think it's interesting to watch the evolution of stablecoins and how people can actually invest in these things. For example, who's invested here in Tether or USDC? No one, right? Because you can't actually own stock in Bitcoin. Oh, we've got a Bitfinex shareholder, maybe. There we go. But no one else. Okay, so the main thing here is like, as more and more stablecoins and projects become decentralized, as more and more of them are not afraid of regulation and actually want to distribute out their tokens and distribute ownership, like Frax, like Fei with the Tribe token, like all of these other stablecoin projects, like Maker, you can actually own the piece of the decentralized central bank of the ecosystem, right? One of the main things is we only basically work at Frax in the stablecoin space, and one thing we're really interested in, and it's important for us, is to make the distribution and ownership of essentially what we like to call the money printer as wide and distributed as possible, so that the governance belongs to devs and people using it, and not just basically the private VC ownership.
Cool. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the metaverse, which is totally a way for me to self-shill because I run a newsletter called Into the Metaverse at Time, which you can subscribe to for free. But if you ask some of the builders of the metaverse right now, like Mark Zuckerberg or others, they'll tell you that the future of technology is not the blockchain. It's immersive worlds, it's AR, it's VR, it's haptic gloves, it's all sorts of technology, wearable tech. And I'm wondering what you guys think of that, and if there's a way to integrate some of that tech into the blockchain, or if they're opposed, or what do you think of that?
So my definition of a DApp, regardless of if it's the metaverse, is it needs to be open, permissionless, decentralized, and you have the right to exit, meaning you're not being locked in by a platform. And when it comes to the metaverse, that means that the infrastructure the metaverse is built on needs to be decentralized. So when companies like Meta come out, it's unclear if they're actually achieving the vision or if they're just rebranding for their own bags. But more creatively, what the metaverse I think enables is for us to have a digital afterlife. So where we created, social media on Web 2, like Instagram, Twitter, and that captures a lot of our thoughts and images and whatnot. They're stored on centralized servers. But when you think about an afterlife, your legend or your what lives on after you're gone, the metaverse, given that everything is permanent on chain and people can interact with it, it kind of enables us to live on beyond our physical body. So that's how I kind of view it.
I hate the term metaverse. It comes from a moron who's got a haircut that looks like a rolled up foreskin on the top of his head. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg has never created a product in his life. He steals ideas or buys them. And this is the first project that has his stench all over it. Now, I accidentally created my kind of metaverse project. A few months ago, I thought it'd be fun to send 3 kids to an Ethereum event so they can go experience this. And then it just spiraled. My DMs got absolutely melted, and we ended up sending, with a bunch of wonderful contributors and a bunch of wonderful helpers, we sent kids all over the world to go and experience events like this who couldn't afford it otherwise. That's the real world and having fun. So fuck the metaverse. Let's get people paid. Let's get them so they don't have to worry about next month's rent. Let's get them out of their fucking parents' basements. Let's get them on flights around conferences. Let's get them building cool shit. Let's have them having fun and looking people in the eye and falling in love and going away to a forest and all that shit. Fuck putting goggles on your eyes. Fuck Mark Zuckerberg, and fuck the horse he rode in on.
It's hard to follow that. So from my perspective, we are living in metaverse already. Like every single person here has a phone with them, which has most of their life actually in that device, somewhere in the cloud, and somewhere kind of shared with all the other people in this ecosystem. Like we are, from my perspective, we are already kind of living more in our digital life than in our physical. And yes, we should be doing more physical, and obviously past 2 years have not able to, like for many of us, have not made us able to do that. At least for me, I've spent, I don't know, probably 10 hours on Zoom every day. But like in general, our life is kind of already digital to many ways. Like for me, the definition of being in metaverse is when more than 50% of your assets, of your communications, of your friendships, of your thing are digital, and we are there already. And like 3D glasses, 2D VR, whatever, doesn't really matter as much as like this, connections that we build with people and the things we're doing in this kind of very rich environment. And like, yeah, I mean, there'll be a bunch of 3D stuff. The games will be built, like all those things will come. But at the same time, it's like we are already here. Like let's keep building like productive stuff, and let's enable more people.
But it always feels, if you read Bill Gates' books around the information superhighway, and you watch him stand on stage talking about how the internet is going to affect our lives, he was so directionally correct, but execution wrong. He obsessed over the browser when the value was Google. And I see Mark Zuckerberg doing the exact same thing. He's obsessed about the medium, but not understanding the culture. He's obsessed about putting goggles on your face, but doesn't know what it's like for somebody to be able to afford 3 months' rent. Like, he's so removed from reality, and I am certain that man has never experienced love in his life, and he has no soul. And that is why the people at Apple hate him, and they're trying to make sure he doesn't slap goggles on your face and win. But that all aside, I think that we are living in this crazy three-dimensional bubble where we all come together and debate ideas and get to go out in the world. And we get to do that because we got early access to technology that we have to give to more people. So I think instead of debating the overlap of blockchain and metaverse, we should just keep focusing on one thing. Can we make some of this shit work on your phone? Because today, it barely does. Like, we got these fucking metaverse devices you can slap in front of your face right now, but most of the transactions that can really make you a profit, you need to construct them on a desktop computer, and that has to change.
What aspect of blockchain technology or nascent blockchain technology coming in the next year or two most excites you at the moment?
So for me right now, I see the biggest gap is that people are afraid of holding their seed phrase, of using applications and contracts, because this stuff is technical, it's not secure, there's rug pulls, hacks, all kinds of stuff going on. And actually, like, regulators and hold that space is not helping because they're driving people to be anonymous, and so you actually have even less clarity what's going on with your applications and contracts and all those things. And so I'm excited about actually addressing that problem with products, with able to, machine learning, with all the tools we actually have already to really deliver kind of a safe experience to the users who don't know anything about crypto, who don't know what seed phrases are, who just want to sign up and start using apps, who want to save money, who want to buy some stable coins to put them into some kind of lending market. and at the same time knows that this lending market is not going to steal their money, right? Like kind of surfacing the audits, surfacing the potential threats, understanding if there's anomalies in the activity on chain, and actually preventing users from being kind of attacked by the systems.
Yeah, I think the most interesting technology in the next 2 to 3 years is people being able to save on the blockchain instead of in their bank accounts, right? Exactly as it was said. People being able to actually earn good yield on their dollar-denominated stablecoins or any kind of stablecoins that they want to do, because you know that the bank is scamming you. You know what I mean? When you actually put money in the bank and they give you 0.05% interest, you know for a fact they're making much more than that, because they're in business. They're not making 0.05% interest on your deposits, right? They're basically rugging you, right? And the most important thing is in the next 2 to 3 years that we're excited about at Frax, other projects like Faye and Rari that was on the panel before me, is exactly stablecoin yield, stablecoin lending, people moving their actual savings accounts and safely moving their dollar-denominated savings on-chain, being able to earn actual living yield that's actually important to them and not just a rounding error, and getting completely scammed by banks, which is literally exactly what's going on right now.
I would add, so riffing off yield, traditionally we've thought of yield as like DeFi degeneracy, but we're starting to see staking come to life, and I don't think staking has had its heyday. So we have ETH2 coming up, and we've got all other protocols like the Graph where you can use a utility token. But to me, this is really the 0 to 100 moment, because even if you hold a stock, you can't do anything with it. If you hold the US dollar, you can't do anything with it. But with a token, you can stake the token, you're contributing to the consensus and security of the protocol, and you earn more of the token. It's fundamentally a different way of contributing and also making income. And I think we're going to see a lot of people start dedicating their full-time job to just staking across protocols that they believe in, and that's how we can actually change that inequality we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about how to design a good mobile wallet on and off for 5 years. The previous iteration of Balance, we ended up building Wallet Connect because it was the only way that we could figure out how to get an app that contained your private keys to talk to a browser. And this was a kind of hack that we got done to create this communication layer. But 3 months ago or 4 months ago, Apple released something called Safari iOS extensions. And to me, Apple is like this gleaming citadel in the sky of perfection that has a lot of really weird stuff going on inside it. But they laid down the drawbridge for the Ethereum community with this extensions API. Because what it allows us to do is create wallets that are extensions to Safari that allow developers to build tools with the #1 mobile browser in the world. Like almost 70% of mobile traffic in the US is on Safari, on iOS. And that's because people are really active. So we're really going after this as hard and as fast as possible at Balance. And I think this is really exciting because I think every wallet should have an extension, because then it incentivizes dApp developers to adapt their dApp for mobile. And that means that we are going to reduce the cost to access Ethereum by tenfold. You don't need a laptop. You don't need a ledger. You just need an iPhone, and it will work with 99% of dApps by the end of this year, I think. And that's a huge innovation. So we're really excited about that. We're really excited to see all the wallets do something in that space. And we just want to make it easier for dApp developers to put this stuff on our phones.
Cool. Well, one of the really cool aspects of blockchain technology is how modular it is, and people keep using the metaphor of like Lego blocks, like building blocks on top of each other. So I'm wondering, all 4 of you guys have like very cool products and protocols you're working on, and I'm wondering if you could talk about how there might be overlap and building blocks on each of them. And I know that already there's a connection between Near and the Graph, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, everything is building on top of each other. So, Balance could use a subgraph. Maybe Balance is connected to Near, so we have a Near subgraph, and maybe Frax is on Near or whatever chain. And basically, all of our protocols can collaborate. And that's really the cool thing, or really the definition of Web3 is like, how open source is it? How permissionless is it? Can people really switch on and off whatever layer of the stack they want, allowing that sort of agnostic view that we as builders aren't deciding for the developer what they should build on, but enabling them to choose for themselves.
Yeah, and there's an interesting story how I became affiliated with the Graph, where the engineers came to me and they said, Richard, we can't figure out token balances. And I said, that's somewhat problematic because the brand name is Balance. And we realized that there is no way to actually count token balances without stepping through every single state transition on every single block for every single token for the entirety of the Ethereum blockchain, and then reverse engineering it to give you the wallet outlook. And so this is why you have to still manually add tokens, and why if you go into Xerion or Zapper, there's differences, is that your balance is some kind of mirage out there that you're trying to figure out. And so I think it's really interesting that you have a decentralized protocol, but these incredible points of centralization, both around who can see the protocol clearly, and then also who can actually construct a transaction and broadcast it to that protocol quickly. So if you actually look under the hood between the wallet and Ethereum, there are these massive points of centralization, and that's what the whole graph's mission is to at least take the query layer and not get that sucked up into a single company, which is exactly what happened with Google, because you have the web, right, but the index of the web is infinitely larger. You can slice it in so many ways. And what might not be apparent to people who aren't engineers, and certainly wasn't apparent to me, is that you have Ethereum, which is several kind of tens of gigabytes, but then you have the index of Ethereum, which can be terabytes and terabytes and terabytes, depending on whether you slice it by stablecoins or NFTs or derivatives or ENS names. And so these building blocks are fascinating, but also understanding who controls them and the points of centralization that aren't at the visible layer is very important.
Yeah, that was really well said. In fact, expanding on that point, Frax is one of the most prolific users and integrators of many, many, many blockchain products. We're not only on 12 different blockchains natively. We use Alchemy, we use the Graph, we use Infura, we use probably so many things compared to the average project, just because we want to be prolific and everywhere. And what's actually amazing, as Rick was saying, is we don't need anyone's permission to do that, right? We literally don't need anyone's permission to natively issue Frax there. We don't need his permission to use his wallet. We don't need anything in terms of any kind of user agreements or anything like that. If we wanted to get on PayPal, right? If we wanted people to be able to send and receive payments with Frax on PayPal, we can't do that, right? It is a completely closed off system. It is completely guarded, and they can kick us out at any time and at any place. And the beautiful thing, and the reason Web3 is growing many, many magnitudes faster than anything Web2 ever did, is we don't need anyone's permission to build on top and use anything else. And that's the beauty of composability.
And one last thing I want to highlight is that the wallet layer is one of the most contentious parts, because very few of them are actually truly open source. And to stick with that open source ethos is really hard, right? When my entire team told me to jog on and started Rainbow, that was a real testing of my principles. But my principles were, you were free to do so, and you were all free to leave and fork me. And the same is true for this version of Balance. If my entire team disagree with me, they should fork me. If anybody has a better idea how about to do a wallet, just don't use our brand, just fork off in a different direction. And I think that if you study history, we've benefited from hard people who didn't make as much money as Bill Gates, but they had way more impact because they open sourced their work, they shared it with the people, and they allowed differing opinions to fork off with one click. And that's what I really hope can percolate up from the protocol layer and the infrastructure layer. We've got examples of that now. And now at the wallet layer, we need a rich ecosystem of collaboration, of forking, of merging and remerging, and different brands existing and different takes on what a wallet is. Because it's not that everybody is going to build their own wallet and run it on their own device, but I'd like to know that someone can. And I think that you should really pay attention to what tools you're using to construct your transactions over the years. And they should be more like Ethereum, which is community built, open source, and community funded.
Yeah, in general, for me, the definition of Web3 is low switching costs. Decentralization, open source, all of this is what powers it, right? It's an instrument we use to achieve low switching costs. And like, even if you think like the block production, the whole point is there's the central servers that actually produce blocks, but the idea is like each one of them can disappear, and it doesn't matter which one you send transaction to, there's always things happening. And similar, like on every single layer, we want to have enough different options for middleware so that people can switch. We want to have enough options for wallets so people can switch. We want to have enough options for languages so people can switch. We want to have enough options for even stablecoins, and this at every level allows us to kind of keep innovating, because this actually keeps us on our toes to keep making the best product.
And that's what incentivizes us to do better, right? We've had open source, but we've never had open state, right? You can have an open source UI to some product, but if the data of your friendship group is hidden away, and that state is kind of buried away in a server of a company, that just precludes developers from having different opinions. And to the extent that blockchains are the future of technology, I think it's shifting the world into a state we can all agree on and that developers know they can rely on.
I think we've hit our time limit here, but thank you so much to all of you for this awesome and fiery conversation. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.